We have been brewing, taxing, and drinking alcohol for thousands of years. It is often described as our oldest creation, a product of early agriculture and human ingenuity. But humans did not create alcohol. We found it. Long before the first member of the Homo genus appeared, our primate ancestors were navigating dense tropical canopies. Survival in that environment required identifying high-energy food from a distance. According to the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis, the distinct olfactory signature of fermenting fruit guided these primates to scarce, calorie-dense sugars hidden within the trees. This biochemical process is a planetary inevitability. When wild fruit ripens and falls, its skin breaks, allowing airborne yeasts to access the fructose within. These single-celled organisms consume the sugar for metabolic energy, releasing carbon dioxide and ethanol as waste products. The human attraction to alcohol did not begin as a search for intoxication. It was an adaptation for survival. Our physiological receptors and metabolic pathways were forged tens of millions of years ago, hardwiring our ancestors to seek out the energy found in fermenting fruit. This diagram outlines the biological mechanism of fermentation. On the left, a yeast cell processes glucose through glycolysis, breaking it down into ethanol. But this process is self-limiting. Ethanol is toxic to the yeast. Rising concentrations eventually kill the microorganisms, creating a biological ceiling. Natural fermentation typically stops when the liquid reaches 15 to 18% alcohol by volume. This biological cap meant that for the vast majority of history, the only available alcoholic beverages were mild beers, wines, and meats. This chemical threshold prevented our ancestors from achieving profound, life-threatening intoxication through foraging alone. In the wild, nature provided a built-in mechanism for moderation. The transition from foraging to farming changed the trajectory of our species. For decades, the prevailing narrative was that humans settled into permanent villages, primarily to cultivate grain for bread. Archaeological evidence now suggests a different primary driver. In the Rakethet Cave in Israel, researchers discovered 13,000-year-old stone mortars containing traces of a sophisticated three-stage brewing operation. These Natufian hunters were malting and mashing wild grains to produce beer for mortuary rituals, thousands of years before the first evidence of cultivated cereals for food appeared in the region. This suggests that alcohol played a role in the social brain hypothesis. As humans moved into larger, settled groups, they needed ways to facilitate bonding among non-relatives. Alcohol triggers the release of endorphins and lowers inhibitions, acting as a social lubricant that allowed large groups to cooperate and build complex societies. Rather than being a byproduct of civilization, the human drive to reliably produce and socialize around alcohol may have been the catalyst that forced us to settle, cultivate, and domesticate the crops that built the modern world. The limit of natural fermentation was eventually shattered by human engineering. In the 8th century, Arab alchemists developed the alembic still. As shown on the right side of this graphic, they moved past biology and into pure physics. By exploiting the fact that ethanol boils at a lower temperature than water, they could vaporize the alcohol, capture it, and condense it into a highly concentrated spirit. This invention increased the potency of alcohol from 15% to over 40%. This technological shift transformed alcohol into a concentrated industrial commodity. During the 18th century Gin Craze in London, the mass availability of cheap, high-proof spirits led to catastrophic social erosion. This engraving, Gin Lane, captured the result: a society in collapse, characterized by debilitating solitary intoxication and a spike in urban poverty and death. Distilled spirits interact with the brain's reward circuitry with far more intensity than fermented fruit. Chronic exposure to high concentrations of ethanol forces the brain to downregulate its own inhibitory receptors. Over time, the pathology of addiction shifts from drinking for pleasure to drinking to alleviate the physical and psychological distress of withdrawal. By inventing distillation, we bypassed the biological safety net that had existed for millions of years. We took a communal caloric source and turned it into an agent of mass physiological dependency. In the modern era, governments treat alcohol as a vital economic engine. Its regulation and taxation have become indispensable to the fiscal health of the state. but the tax revenue generated by the industry is often lower than the costs it creates. In British Columbia, $2.04 billion in alcohol revenue was dwarfed by $2.81 billion in societal costs. This $768 million net deficit exists because alcohol, a toxin linked to over 200 health conditions, loses the state 33 cents for every drink sold. The modern alcohol industry operates at a massive scale, yet it passes a heavy, unsustainable financial and physical burden onto the public. We are now seeing a shift in how society views this chemical. U.S. drinking rates have reached a 96-year low, with only 54% of adults reporting alcohol consumption. For the first time, a majority of the population views even moderate drinking as a health risk. This shift is led largely by younger demographics who are actively prioritizing mental health over traditional drinking culture. The sober curious movement is decoupling social connection from intoxication, creating a massive new market for non-alcoholic alternatives. Millennia-old habits are being questioned by a populace that is increasingly aware of its own physiological vulnerabilities. We discovered the ethanol molecule as a tool for survival in the ancient forest, but we invented the sprawling systems of agriculture, distillation, and taxation that define its impact today. As our health awareness increases, we are beginning to reevaluate our relationship with the chemical that helped build our world.